Giant beavers, dinosaurs, mammoths, and hyenas, these are more prehistoric creatures scientists found frozen in ice. Here's something you probably wouldn't be expecting to see on this list: ancient camels. Believe it or not, camels actually first appeared in North America more than 40 million years ago. Over time, they split into two main groups: the camels we know today and the relatives, llamas and alpacas. The camels made their way across the Bering Land Bridge, while llamas and alpacas moved south. But there was another species, the Camelops hasturnus, which stuck around in North America until the Ice Age. Some of these camels roamed as far south as Honduras, while others made it all the way to Alaska and the Yukon. In 2008, gold miners in Alaska discovered some Ice Age bones, which turned out to belong to this extinct camel species. The bones were so well preserved in the cold that researchers managed to extract DNA. Imagine a 6-foot-long beaver weighing 220 pounds. Ice Age giant beavers had 6-inch long front teeth. They would have looked like fierce predators, but they didn't eat meat. This massive rodent was about the size of a black bear and had a tail that resembled a muskrat's rather than today's typical beaver tail. A 2019 study looked at fossils from the Yukon and Ohio dating back 10,000 to 50,000 years and revealed that the giant beaver's diet consisted mostly of aquatic plants. Tessa Plint, a researcher with Heriot-Watt University, explained that by studying the chemical makeup of fossilized bones and teeth, scientists can figure out what an animal ate, even tens of thousands of years later. Understanding the diet of these ancient animals helps them learn more about how climate change affected them. As the earth warmed and dried, the giant beaver couldn't compete with smaller, more adaptable beavers that survived. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists found a well-preserved mammoth in Siberia, later named Yuka. She was a young mammoth, about 6 to 8 years old, and she lived around 39,000 years ago. Yuka's body was in really good shape. Its body measured about 2.5 meters long, and it was remarkably intact, with her trunk, bones, some of her flesh, hair, and eyes still preserved, making her one of the most well-preserved mammoth specimens ever found. Pretty incredible to see. I haven't seen it in person, but based on pictures and video that I've seen of it, it's crazy how well preserved it is. They think she might have fallen into a mud pit or drowned, which helped preserve her so well. People probably butchered her for meat, too, as there were cut marks on her bones. In 2002, an amazing discovery was made in northern Siberia. The remains of a woolly mammoth were found frozen in the permafrost near the Siberian village of Yukagir. The specimen, which was an adult male, turned out to be in remarkable condition. This mammoth's head, still covered in skin, was so well preserved that it looked almost fresh. When polar explorer Bernard Bouygues heard about the find, he led a team to retrieve the mammoth's remains. The team made 3 trips to the site, carefully gathering pieces of the mammoth's body and putting them together. It gave scientists a ton of information about woolly mammoths. For example, they discovered that the mammoth had temporal glands between its eyes and ears. These glands would have helped regulate body temperature. The mammoth's feet were also a key find. The soles had deep cracks in it, which would have helped the animal grip icy surfaces while walking. The specimen also included the tusks, front legs, and even parts of the stomach and intestines. Based on the size of its bones and tusks, scientists estimated that this mammoth was over 9 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed around 4 to 5 tons. Scimitar cats, or homotheriums, were fierce prehistoric predators. Their fossils are rare. Because of this, scientists used to think that they were part of a small population. That changed in 2011 when a bone was found in permafrost at a mining site near Dawson City in Canada. This bone belonged to a scimitar cat, not a saber-toothed cat, which are often confused with scimitar cats. Scimitar cats had shorter, curved teeth that were serrated, unlike the long, flat teeth of saber-tooths. What made this find even more exciting was how well preserved the bone was in the ice. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen were able to sequence the entire genome from this bone. Their genetic makeup hints towards a scimitar-toothed cats as being highly skilled hunters, said Michael Westbury, an evolutionary genomicist at the University of Copenhagen. Going on to say they, quote, likely had very good daytime vision and displayed complex social behaviors, end quote. These cats also had adaptations for endurance. Their bones and cardiovascular systems were strong. They were built for long-distance running. And based on this, researchers believe scimitar cats hunted in packs, wearing down their prey during the day. Scientists estimated the specimen was over 47,000 4,500 years old. Scimitar cats likely went extinct around 10,000 years ago, along with many of the animals that they hunted, like mammoths and woolly rhinos. Most people think of hyenas as the scavengers of Africa, but the ancient Arctic also had its share of these creatures as well. These ancient hyenas lived over 5 million years ago, and its remains have been found around the world, from Mongolia to Kansas to Mexico. In 2019, evolutionary biologist Jack Sang analyzed a pair of fossilized hyena teeth from the Yukon. He quickly identified them as belonging to a species that once roamed the ancient Arctic. These teeth likely belonged to a hyena that lived around 850,000 to 1.4 million years ago. This hyena was equipped with teeth perfect for crushing bones, probably feeding on ancient caribou, bison, and maybe even baby mammoths. Eventually, these hyenas disappeared, and researchers think they were outcompeted by other Ice Age predators like the short-faced bear or bone-crushing dog. Never heard of those before till today. What an awesome name. In 2018, miners working at Hester Creek in the Yukon discovered a mummified squirrel, perfectly preserved from around 30,000 years before. At first, this lump of fur, claws, and limbs didn't look like much, but scientists examined it more and realized that they'd found an Arctic ground squirrel that had died during hibernation. Researchers nicknamed the squirrel Hester after the area where it was discovered, and it's amazing to think that this little guy was running around the Yukon several thousand years ago, said museum representatives. When the mummified squirrel was first found, its exact identity wasn't clear until the team noticed little hands, claws, and a tail. Grant Zazula, a paleontologist from the Yukon government, was part of the team that studied the squirrel, saying, "It's not quite recognizable until you see those little hands and these claws, and you see a little tail, and then you see ears." The team figured that Hester was likely hibernating when it died. Arctic ground squirrels curl up into balls like this one when they hibernate in underground dens, often lined with nests made of leaves. These nests are usually found empty, so finding one with an actual squirrel inside was pretty cool. To avoid damaging the specimen, they decided not to unravel the ball of fur. Instead, they had it x-rayed by a local veterinarian who'd expected the bones to be in pretty bad condition, but when the x-ray results came in, the squirrel's skeleton was actually in great condition, and it looked nearly identical to a modern Arctic ground squirrel. In 2021, scientists discovered a tiny microscopic creature that had been frozen in Siberian permafrost for over 24,000 years. The team found it buried 11.5 feet deep. The little animal was what's called a beloid rotifer, and despite being frozen solid for thousands of years, it actually came back to life. And on top of that, it was still able to reproduce. Rotifers are tough little creatures. They typically live in freshwater or moist soil and are known for surviving in extreme conditions like radiation, dehydration, low oxygen, and freezing temperatures. To confirm its age, scientists radiocarbon dated the soil surrounding the critter. Stas Malaven, a co-author of the study, couldn't believe it, saying, "We revived animals that saw woolly mammoths," which is quite impressive. I agree. Next on the list we have Sanek. In 2021, there was a pretty amazing discovery in Greenland, a new dinosaur. New in that we didn't know it existed, not a living dinosaur, sadly. Researchers identified a previously unknown dinosaur species based on well-preserved skulls. This newfound species was named Sanek, meaning cold bone in Greenlandic Inuit. The remains of this creature date back to the late Triassic period, about 214 million years ago. The skulls were first found in 1994, and at the time they were believed to belong to a Plateosaurus, but recent advancements in research techniques, including micro-CT scans, showed that these skulls actually belonged to a different dino altogether, a dinosaur that was different from any known species. To visualize the full form of the skulls, researchers used digital modeling after the micro-CT scans. These were bipedal herbivores, medium-sized, and shared a lot of similarities with sauropods. Those are those long-necked, giraffe-looking dinosaurs you probably remember from Jurassic Park. But the Sanek would have been a lot smaller than them. They're pretty cool-looking dinosaurs, almost like a sauropod mixed with a velociraptor, at least to me. In 2016, scientists discovered a 12,400-year-old mummified puppy. This puppy was discovered in the permafrost along a river in Siberia. Researchers believe the puppy died in a landslide, and its body became preserved in the ice. Its fur was intact, and the body, from its nose to its tail, was almost completely preserved. The only part that wasn't in perfect condition was the brain, which had started to decompose, but even still, about 70 to 80% of the brain was still intact. This puppy is one of the few animals in the Pleistocene era which has a well-preserved brain. While there have been other dog fossils found from the same time period, they were too decomposed to study. The puppy's condition is especially special because its brain could help researchers learn more about ancient animals. In fact, they were saying at the time that they could potentially use the DNA and tissues from this puppy to bring it back to life, which would have been nuts. Along with the frozen puppy, human tools were found near the site, meaning that this dog was domesticated and owned by people. In March of 2011, Sean Funk, a shovel operator at a mine in Fort McMurray, Alberta, was digging when he made an amazing discovery. A discovery that turned out to be Alberta's oldest dinosaur fossil and one of the best preserved ever found in the entire world. Honestly, this has to be the most amazing dinosaur discovery that I've ever read about. And I think Don Henderson, curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum, agrees, saying at the time, "Right away we knew it was going to be something good, but we had no idea how good it was going to be." So after getting the fossil back to the museum, Don and his team got to work, and 6 years later the dinosaur was named Borealopelta markmicheli. The name Borealopelta means shield of the north, and the species name honors Mark Mitchell, the museum technician who spent over 7,000 grueling hours removing the dinosaur from rock. Now, I'm not done with this one. There's just too much to talk about with this discovery to cram it into one point. So as I said, the Borealopelta was incredibly well preserved. It was covered in thick armor, especially around its neck. It also had these massive 20-inch spikes at the shoulders that were assumed to be for fighting, but Victoria Arbour, a curator of paleontology, also thought they might have been a display of health and strength, similar to the horns of a bull or tusks of an elephant. Now here's what's utterly crazy to me though. This dinosaur was so intact, they were able to see what was in its stomach. There were twigs and ferns in there, suggesting it ate during the wet season. Scientists think it could have been swept away by a flash flood, eventually sinking to the bottom of the sea. The body would have flipped over and sank, with its thick back and bloated belly causing it to be preserved in sediment, creating a natural time capsule that kept it safe for 110 million years. Here's another crazy thing about this find though. They were even able to determine, to a certain degree, what color the creature was. Most of the fossil was covered in relatively well-preserved skin, and from this, they were able to study pigment cells called melanosomes. Melanosomes are seen in nature all the time. It's what gives many modern-day animals unique markings like spots and stripes. It's rare to see melanosomes in fossils, but again, Borealopelta was especially well preserved. At least one component of Borealopelta's color was this reddish brown, said Caleb Brown from the Royal Tyrrell Museum. The color on its back may have been part of a camouflage pattern called countershading, helping it blend into its environment and avoid predators. Now also in 2011, a team of paleontologists led by William Hammer discovered a new species of ancient dinosaur in the frozen mountains of Antarctica, an area that's usually thought of as one of the coldest places on Earth, but of course millions of years ago it was much warmer. The dinosaur was small, around 4 to 5 feet long, and had bird-like hip bones. It was likely related to early plant eaters like the Ferbosaur and Heterodontosaur, which were the ancestors of larger and more famous dinos like Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. The fossils were found on Mount Kirkpatrick, part of the Central Transatlantic Mountains. Hammer and his team uncovered a leg and foot, but they weren't sure if they had found the dinosaur's head. It would take about a year to fully understand what they'd found. Thomas Holtz, a geology professor at the University of Maryland, noted that the find could help fill gaps in both dinosaur evolution and the ancient Antarctic environment, saying that this discovery was from a time when dinosaurs were just starting to take over, comparing these early small plant eaters to rabbits, fast, common, and without armor, but important to the overall evolution of the giant plant eaters that came later. Finding fossils in Antarctica is extremely challenging because of the harsh conditions and short research window. Hammer had been trying to return to the site since 1990, but bad weather and helicopter problems cut short his 2003 trip. As Holtz put it, anytime we find fossils there, it's a brand new species. It's practically unexplored territory. So these weren't the only dino remains William Hammer discovered in the mountains of Antarctica. In 1990, he and his team discovered a 22-foot meat-eating dinosaur called Cryolophosaurus. This was a big deal because it was the first dinosaur ever found in Antarctica. Cryolophosaurus was a meat-eating dinosaur that lived around 190 million years ago during the early Jurassic period. It was about 20 to 23 feet long, 6 to 7 meters, and weighed roughly 1,000 pounds. What really sets this dinosaur apart was its unique crest. The crest, found on the top of its head, had a very unusual shape, kind of like a frozen backwards mohawk. There are like two kind of things here. It's believed that the crest could have been used for display, either to attract mates or to communicate with other members of its species. As Hammer put it, it looked like a frozen crested reptile, which is how they got the name Cryolophosaurus, meaning frozen crested lizard. And again, in the early 1990s, William Hammer of Augustana College discovered more incredible fossils on Mount Kirkpatrick. These particular fossils included parts of a foot, leg, and ankle bones from a long-necked dinosaur that lived around 190 million years ago. It wasn't until much later, though, that the fossil was identified. The fossils were painstakingly removed from the ice and rock using jackhammers, rock saws, and chisels under extremely difficult conditions, said Nathan Smith, a graduate student at the Field Museum in Chicago. After a lot of hard work, Smith and paleontologist Diego Pohl realized they'd found a new species of dinosaur, which they named Glacialosaurus hammeri. This dinosaur was about 20 to 25 feet long and would have weighed between 4 to 6 tons. It belonged to a group called sauropodomorphs, which includes some of the largest dinosaurs ever. Think of those massive-sized, long-necked plant eaters. Around 20,000 years ago, a young woolly rhinoceros was going about its day in what's now northern Siberia. It was probably foraging for food when it made an oopsie and drowned in a river. Fast forward to 2020, and that same woolly rhino became a huge discovery for scientists. As rising temperatures cause permafrost to melt, creatures like this long extinct rhino are being uncovered, giving researchers a glimpse into prehistoric times. Permafrost is a layer of soil that's been frozen for thousands of years, great for preserving ancient remains. The woolly rhino's carcass was found by a local farmer in Yakutia, Siberia, about 15,000 years after the species went extinct. The fossil was incredibly well preserved, with its fur, hooves, and internal organs still intact. But what made this discovery even more special was the rhino's horn, which is rarely found in such good condition because cartilage usually decomposes relatively quickly. In 2018, a local man named Pavel Efimov made an incredible discovery in Siberia: the severed head of a giant wolf, perfectly preserved beneath the permafrost. But this wolf was nearly 40,000 years old. It wasn't until 2019 that researchers started studying it in detail. The big question they were trying to answer was whether the wolf's head had been chopped off by humans or separated by ice. The cut on the wolf's neck wasn't what you'd expect from ice separation. It was rougher, less smooth, meaning it might have been made by something like a tool. The severed head is quite large, measuring about 40 centimeters, much bigger than the typical 25 centimeter head of a modern Siberian wolf. It had a thick mammoth-like coat, sharp fangs, and some parts of its skull seemed more developed than today's wolves. In 2016, ornithologist Stephen Emsley made a surprising find during a research trip in Antarctica. He stumbled on ancient penguin remains at Cape Urzar near the Ross Sea, and what he discovered there was unlike anything he'd seen before. Now, at first, Emsley was researching ancient penguin remains at the site, following a lead about penguin droppings. He didn't expect to find much, since explorers like Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton hadn't recorded any penguin sightings in the area. But when Emsley arrived, he found something unexpected: white splotchy guano stains and loose chick bones, which usually indicate that a penguin colony had recently occupied the site, but that wasn't the case. Investigating further, he found complete penguin chick carcasses and even intact mummies. The site must have been covered by snow and ice soon after the colony was last abandoned, preserving the surface remains for centuries, Emsley went on to write. The site had been used by penguins at different times in the past, with carbon dating showing it was occupied 3 times starting around 5,000 years ago. The site's location and the penguins' repeated visits were likely because of changing ice ice conditions, which would open and close the coast to the penguins. Emsley believes that this area could potentially see penguins returning in the future as climate change melts the sea ice earlier each summer, giving them access to the coast again. In 2018, some fossil ivory hunters in northeastern Siberia made a pretty cool discovery. While digging into the permafrost, they unearthed the carcass of a bird, but this bird was a 46,000-year-old specimen, perfectly frozen in time. The discovery was sent to paleontologist Love Dallin and a team of researchers at the Swedish Museum of Natural History. The bird is believed to be an ancestor of the horned lark, which is found in places like northern Russia and Mongolia today. It's a cool find though, the first bird of its kind ever to be discovered. The fact that the bird was almost completely intact made it one of the best preserved ancient animals ever found. The bird was found near Balaya Gora, a village in Yakutia, an area known as the Pole of Cold because of its extremely cold winters, sometimes reaching as low as -60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly -50 degrees Celsius. That is just too cold. The researchers think that the end of the last ice age led to the formation of a new subspecies of animals like this bird. The discovery adds to a list of well-preserved creatures found in the same area, like a 42,000-year-old foal and an 18,000-year-old puppy, both of which I've talked about in previous videos.
Our first discovery takes us straight to one of the most iconic creatures of the Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. Scattered across Siberia's permafrost, nearly complete carcasses have been uncovered, offering an unparalleled glimpse into a prehistoric world. These aren't just piles of bones. Many specimens still carry clumps of shaggy hair, remnants of skin, and even traces of blood. Scientists have been able to extract genetic materials from these remains, sparking debates about the possibility of de-extinction and cloning. Beyond their sheer size and grandeur, these mammoths also carry clues about their diets and the ecosystems they roamed. Detailed tissue analysis have revealed microbial communities that once thrived inside of these giants, providing unexpected insights into the complex interplay between Ice Age megafauna and their environment. Every frozen mammoth found in Siberia is like a time capsule, inviting us to piece together the puzzle of life in a world long past. Next up is one of the most hair-raising discoveries, a 30,000-year-old virus revived from Siberian permafrost. Dubbed Pithovirus sibericum, this giant virus is one of the largest ever found, and its revival in a controlled laboratory setting stunned scientists worldwide. Unlike most viruses that are quickly degraded by time, Pithovirus lay dormant, perfectly preserved in ice. Its reawakening not only highlights the incredible resilience of viral particles, but also raises some important questions about the risks of ancient pathogens re-emerging as global temperatures rise. Researchers are studying its structure and genetic makeup to understand how viruses evolve over millennia. While there's no immediate danger to modern life, the discovery underscores the delicate balance between nature's hidden past and the challenges of our changing climate. Siberia's permafrost isn't just a graveyard for large creatures, it's also a sanctuary for tiny, resilient bacteria. Scientists have isolated bacterial strains that have been dormant for tens of thousands of years, reviving them in laboratory experiments. One such strain belongs to a group of bacillus species known for their extraordinary survival skills in extreme conditions. These microbes have adapted in a way that allow them to withstand not only freezing temperatures, but also high radiation and low nutrient levels. The genetic makeup of these ancient bacteria is revealing unexpected adaptations, mechanisms that could inspire new biotechnological applications, from novel antibiotics to enzymes that function under harsh industrial conditions. Such discoveries provide a fascinating look at the resilience of life and the possibility that even the simplest organisms can thrive in the most unforgiving environments. Their story is a testament to nature's ingenuity and the enduring legacy of life through the ages. Deep beneath the Siberian surface lie ice cores that are are nothing short of climate history books. These long cylindrical samples of ice have trapped layers of air, dust, and even volcanic ash from thousands of years ago. By analyzing these tiny bubbles of ancient atmosphere, scientists can reconstruct the Earth's climate history in astonishing detail. These ice cores reveal shifts in greenhouse gas concentrations, temperature fluctuations, and even clues about past solar activity. For instance, layers enriched with volcanic ash hint at massive eruptions that temporarily cooled the planet, while varying gas compositions tell stories of natural climate cycles. Beyond their importance for understanding global warming, these records provide a baseline against which we can measure human impact on today's climate. Each layer in an ice core is like a page in Earth's diary, a narrative that not only informs us about the distant past, but also guides our predictions for the future. It's kind of like a perfect blend of history, science, and a little bit of detective work hidden in the ice. Siberia's frozen expanses aren't just a repository for terrestrial relics, they are also a treasure trove of space rocks. The continent's harsh climate means that meteorites, which might otherwise weather away in warmer regions, remain pristinely preserved in ice. Over the decades, meteorite hunters and scientists have uncovered fragments that offer invaluable clues about the early solar system. One particularly intriguing meteorite revealed unusual isotopic compositions, sparking fresh theories about how our solar system formed and evolved. These cosmic visitors are like natural laboratories, each carrying the chemical signatures of processes that predate even the Earth itself. Their study not only helps us understand the building blocks of our planet, but also inform us about the wider universe. Hidden within the icy tombs of the Altai Mountains lies one of Siberia's most enchanting archaeological finds, the Ice Maiden. This remarkably preserved mummy, discovered among the burial mounds of the ancient Pazyryk culture, offers an intimate look at a lost world. The Ice Maiden's delicate tattoos, intricately embroidered clothing, and ornate jewelry provide a window into the spiritual and daily life of these nomadic peoples. Her burial site, complete with ceremonial artifacts, suggests that she held a significant position within her community. The precision of her preservation has allowed scientists to study not just her physical attributes, but also the materials and techniques used in her adornments, sparking debates about trade routes and cultural exchanges in the ancient world. The Ice Maiden is definitely more than a frozen body. It's like a storyteller whose silent whispers continue to intrigue historians and archaeologists, revealing the artistry and sophistication of a people long forgotten. Among the icy relics of Siberia are seeds that have withstood the test of time. Literally. Preserved in permafrost for thousands of years, these seeds have occasionally shown the ability to germinate under the right conditions. Scientists are fascinated by these natural time capsules as they hold the genetic blueprints of ancient plant species that once thrived in a very different world. By comparing these ancient seeds with their modern descendants, researchers can trace evolutionary changes and shifts in plant biodiversity over millennia. In controlled experiments, some of these seeds have sprouted, offering a rare opportunity to study traits that might have been lost over time. These findings not only provide insights into the resilience of life, but also raise intriguing questions about de-extinction and biodiversity conservation. In the frozen depths of Siberia, every seed is a whisper from the past, a living relic that connects us to ecosystems long vanished, yet still influential in today's world. Not all the frozen giants of Siberia were herbivores. Among the finds are the formidable remains of cave lions, the apex predators of the Ice Age. These predators, whose fossils have been remarkably well preserved in permafrost, offer critical insights into the evolution and adaptations of large carnivores. Detailed studies of their bones reveal specialized features, robust jaw structures, powerful limbs, and unique skull formations that hint hint at their hunting strategies and social behavior. Cave lions roamed vast territories, and their remains help scientists piece together the ecological dynamics of ancient predator-prey relationships. Beyond their role in the food chain, these fossils also allow researchers to explore genetic links between extinct species and their modern relatives, deepening our understanding of evolutionary biology. Every bone and claw encased in Siberian ice is a fragment of a larger story about survival, adaptation, and the relentless march of time in one of Earth's most extreme environments. While the giants of the Ice Age often steal the spotlight, the tiniest creatures can be just as revealing. Deep in the Siberian ice, scientists have uncovered an array of insect fossils, delicate remnants that offer a window into ancient ecosystems. These fossils include remarkably detailed impressions of wings, exoskeletons, and even some internal structures that are rarely preserved elsewhere. Studying these minute fossils helps researchers understand how insect populations responded to dramatic climate shifts, providing clues about biodiversity and ecological resilience. Some of these insect remains date back tens of thousands of years, capturing evolutionary snapshots of species that once played crucial roles in pollination and the food chain. Despite their small size, these frozen insects are powerful storytellers. They remind us that even the most inconspicuous organisms can hold the keys to understanding our planet's dynamic past, and they challenge us to consider how life, in all of its varied forms, adapts and survives through the ages. Beyond the realms of biology and climate, Siberian ice has also preserved mysterious man-made artifacts that continue to puzzle historians. In various excavations, researchers have discovered tools, ornaments, and even fragments of what appear to be ceremonial objects, all embedded in the permafrost. These artifacts, some intricately crafted from metal and stone, offer clues about ancient human cultures and their technological prowess. Their design and craftsmanship often defy easy explanation, hinting at trade networks, cultural exchanges, and the deep-seated understanding of the natural world that we are only beginning to comprehend. Each object serves as a tangible link to human ingenuity, a snapshot of time when early inhabitants braved harsh climates with resourcefulness and creativity.
In 2007 and 2008, two baby mammoths, later named Lyuba and Chroma, were found in Siberia. They were so well preserved that researchers were able to piece together how they died, even though both calves, one about 1 month old and the other 2 months old, died more than 40,000 years ago. Scientists used CT scans to find that the two mammoths probably choked on mud after falling into water. Daniel Fisher, a co-author of the study, stated the mud was like a really thick batter that they got clogged in their trachea and they were unable to dislodge by coughing. Basically preserved them from taking another breath. Lyuba and the 1 month old calf was discovered by a reindeer herder. Chroma was found in 2008, frozen upright in permafrost. Scavengers had eaten parts of her heart, lungs, and skull. But both mummies still showed a neonatal line on their teeth, a marker of stress during birth, which helped scientists estimate their ages. CT scans of Lyuba showed signs of what's called a mammalian dive reflex, showing that she fell through the ice into a muddy lake where she tried to clear the mud from her airways but eventually suffocated. Chroma, who had a belly full of breast milk, also had mud in her trachea, but her death is a bit less cut and dry. But according to researchers, it's possible she fell into a river, broke her back, and was then buried in mud while trying to escape. In 2015, scientists in Siberia discovered a baby woolly rhino, perfectly preserved in a frozen riverbank. Nicknamed Sasha after the man who found it, the rhino calf is the most complete specimen of its kind ever discovered. Sasha lived around 10,000 years ago, was about 1.5 meters long, or almost 5 feet, and 0.8 meters high, about 2.6 feet, much smaller than the fully grown adults, which could reach up to 15 feet long. According to Albert Protopopov from the Yakutia Academy of Sciences, baby woolly rhinos are incredibly rare to find, so this was a pretty amazing discovery, especially because it helps researchers learn more about the early life of these animals, which they didn't really know much about before. Woolly rhinos went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Climate change and habitat loss likely led to their extinction, but some scientists also think overhunting may have been a part of it. Around 30,000 years ago in Siberia, a tiny cave lion cub was making its way across the tundra when a sudden mudslide or crack in the permafrost caused the cub to fall and get trapped. The cub was buried in ice, preserving her fur, skin, and organs in almost perfect condition. This poor cub, later named Sparta, was discovered by mammoth tusk hunters in 2017, poking out of the melting permafrost in Yakutia, Siberia. Sparta is probably the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found, said Love Dallin, one of the study's co-authors, going on to say that even her whiskers were preserved. Sparta died about 28,000 years ago, and she was actually found alongside another cub named Boris, who was even older, dying around 43,000 years ago. Both cubs were about 1 to 2 months old when they died, with their sharp teeth just starting to emerge. Cave lions were closely related to modern African lions and lived across the northern hemisphere during the Ice Age. Unlike today's lions, though, these were, of course, adapted to freezing cold weather. In 2020, a perfectly preserved bear mummy was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Siberia again. But anyway, it wasn't quite what scientists expected. At first, researchers thought they'd found the remains of a giant extinct cave bear, but eventually they realized the bear was much younger and from a completely different species. The bear was found by reindeer herders on a remote island in the East Siberian Sea. It was so well preserved that scientists could still see its skin, fur, claws, teeth, nose, internal organs, and even body fat. The remains were named the Etherican bear after a nearby river. At first, researchers at the Lazarev Mammoth Museum believed the bear was a cave bear, a massive species that went extinct about 22,000 years ago, but this bear was only about 3,460 years old. Turned out to be a young female brown bear standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing around 172 pounds. It was probably around 2 to 3 years old when it died. The bear's stomach contents revealed it had been eating plants and birds, with feathers still found inside its belly, which is incredible when you think about it. It also had signs of spinal injuries, which may have contributed to its death. In 2016, a gold miner in Yukon, Canada discovered something frozen in the ice. It turned out to be an ancient wolf pup, which had been almost perfectly preserved for 57,000 years. The mummified gray wolf, known as Zur, was found in the Klondike goldfields near Dawson City. Lead researcher Julie Machin, an anatomy professor, called it, quote, the most complete wolf specimen ever found from the Ice Age, going on to say all her soft tissue, her hair, her skin, even her little nose is still there. She's just complete, and that is really rare. Using radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis, scientists confirmed Zur died at just 7 weeks old. The remains were especially important because they were discovered in North America, unlike most finds in Siberia, as you've seen from this list, which are harder to access. Machen and her team were able to link Zur's DNA to both ancient Beringian wolves from Yukon and Russian gray wolves, which means that ancient wolves from North America and Eurasia mixed. Zur's remains also showed them what Ice Age wolves ate. The assumption had always been that they mostly ate bison or oxen, but as it turned out, this wolf mostly consumed aquatic animals, much like modern wolves in Alaska. In 2011, members of a tribe in northern Siberia found the remains of a steppe bison, perfectly preserved after being frozen for nearly 10,000 years. The bison was transported to the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, where scientists began to study it. Unlike other bison mummies discovered over the years, this one was almost entirely intact, with its internal organs in remarkable condition. Olga Potapova, collections curator at the mammoth site of Hot Springs, explained that while bison mummies are not uncommon, they're usually incomplete, saying, quote, normally what you find with mummies of megafauna is partial carcasses, but this mummy was preserved so well that it earned a record for the level of its preservation. The bison, which was probably about 4 years old when it died, looked like it had starved to death. There was no fat around its abdomen, but its heart and digestive systems were pretty intact, even though some organs had shrunk over time. Researchers even managed to extract tissue samples from each organ, and for the first time ever, they found steppe bison brain tissue still preserved. In 2022, a nearly perfectly mummified baby woolly mammoth was discovered by a miner in the permafrost of Canada's Klondike goldfields. dating back around 30,000 years. The calf, thought to be around 1 month old when it died, was a female and measured just 4.5 feet long. Researchers described it as the most complete mummified mammoth found in North America. A lot of its skin and hair was still intact. As an Ice Age paleontologist, it had been one of my lifelong dreams to come face to face with a real woolly mammoth, said Grant Zazula, a paleontologist with the Yukon government, going on to describe the mammoth as, quote, one of the most incredible mummified Ice Age animals ever discovered in the world. The discovery happened when a mine worker hit something unexpected while digging. The team stopped all their work and brought in geologists who managed to recover the mammoth's remains, and just in time because a storm had been rolling in. Analysis suggested that the mammoth may have died after getting trapped in mud while grazing, with grass found in her stomach. In 2018, yet another incredible discovery was made in Siberia. The nearly perfectly preserved mummified remains of an Ice Age horse, believed to have died between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago. Its body was so well preserved that even tiny details like the hairs in its nostrils and around its hooves were still visible. The foal was found deep in a crater, about 328 feet or 100 meters deep, during an expedition in Yakutia. It was around 2 months old when it died. The mummified body was almost entirely intact, with no visible damage. Scientists collected samples from the foal's hair and tissue and found it belonged to an extinct species known as the Lena horse, which was genetically distinct from the wild horses that still roam the area today. This species lived in Siberia tens of thousands of years ago and disappeared long before modern horses evolved. In 2016, biologist Steve Emsley was in southern Antarctica when he came across something kind of confusing. It looked to be a recently abandoned Adelie penguin colony. There were mummified chicks, guano stains, pebbles from nests, but the thing is, Adelie penguins hadn't been spotted in the region for centuries. What Emsley soon discovered was that the penguin remains were far older than anyone could have imagined. Radiocarbon dating of the bones, eggshells, and mummified skin showed that these penguins had been dead for thousands of years. The rapidly melting ice in Antarctica revealed these ancient penguin remains. The penguins had likely settled in the area during warmer periods when the sea ice melted early, allowing the birds to reach the area and build their nests. The most recent colony, which had been buried during the Little Ice Age about 800 years ago, was finally uncovered as the region's ice began to recede. What you're looking at here is a tardigrade, aka a water bear. Now, is this a newly discovered alien species? Well, I wish, but no. These things actually exist right here at home. They're just really, really tiny, which I'm thankful for, because imagine if that alien-looking thing was the size of just even a regular house cat. That would just be horrifying. Tardigrades, nicknamed water bears, are one of the most resilient animals on the planet. They're microscopic animals that are known for their ability to survive in very extreme conditions all over the world. In places like Antarctica, they've been found frozen in ice for thousands of years. And what's amazing about these things is their ability to go into a kind of state of suspended animation. When conditions are harsh, like extreme cold or dryness, tardigrades dry out or freeze and enter a kind of hibernation. And when researchers thaw them out, they can come back to life. Water bears have even survived space travel in this dormant state. This makes them one of the toughest known organisms in the world. The Cabagon. On April 28th of 1974, off the coast of Littleton, New Zealand, a Japanese fishing vessel, the 28th Kamparamaru, was out doing its thing, but this day would be unlike any other. At around 7 p.m., all 28 crew members, including Captain Kimura, spotted something massive in the water. Whatever it was, had a head that stuck out of the water, and even though they could only see the top of whatever this beast was, they could tell it was an absolute monster. The head alone was about 1.5 meters tall. The creature had these giant, spooky eyes on top, and some crew members thought they saw what looked like a second set of eyes, or maybe nostrils, right beneath. The texture was described as either rough and hairy or scaled with spikes. It was a bit like a gigantic spider head mixed with a sea monster. Captain Kimura even sketched the thing, and it later made headlines in the New Zealand Weekly magazine. Nearby, mysterious footprints were found on the beach. This beastie was soon linked to other cryptids in Japanese waters, like the giant sea ghost Umibazu and the Antarctic Godzilla. More on him in a bit. But the Cabogon has to be one of the strangest sea cryptids ever reported. The colossal squid is believed to be the largest squid in terms of sheer mass. We're talking about a creature that can grow up to 39 to 46 feet long, and it's not just long, it's also built like a tank, unlike its more famous cousin, the giant squid, which are pretty incredible already. The colossal squid actually has hooks on its tentacles though, some swiveling, others three-pointed, and those hooks are sharp, designed to hold on to prey with this grip-like vice. The colossal squid's beak is the largest of any known squid, bigger than that of the giant squid, and its eyes are the biggest in the animal kingdom, with one specimen having eyes about 11 inches across. These creatures weren't found to actually exist until 1925, when two of its tentacles were found in a sperm whale's stomach. Sightings go way back though, but they were thought of the same way creatures like Nessie are, legends and myths. In 1802, a massive squid was spotted in Tasmania, way before anyone officially recognized the giant squid. Then in 1870, a huge squid carcass washed ashore in New Zealand, with locals calling it a tanewa. More sightings and washed up squid parts continued to pop up in the following decades. By 1924, just a year before the colossal squid was officially identified, another giant squid was spotted near Bluff, New Zealand. We know these colossal squids exist now, but we've never retrieved any massive sized carcasses, just ones on the smaller end of the scale. But somewhere deep in the waters off the coast of Antarctica, there are gargantuan squids, possibly even bigger than our current estimates. The large Antarctic sea mammal, also known as the Antarctic Godzilla. So the story goes that on February 13th of 1958, the Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo was cruising through Antarctica's icy waters when around 7 p.m. the crew spotted something massive in Lutzow Bay. This thing was giant. The captain of the ship would go on to dub the creature the Antarctic Godzilla because to him it looked a lot like Godzilla. Now, I love my giant monster movies, Mothra, Gigan, the whole gang. Not the type of movie characters I'd like to encounter in real life though. If I found out the Ninja Turtles were chilling in the sewers below Manhattan, that would be a great day for me. A real life Godzilla rising from the water to wreak havoc on the Japanese public wouldn't be a boring news day, but not good. There's not a ton of info on this case. The sighting was brief, and the creature disappeared before anyone could get a clear look or photo, but the nickname stuck, and some say this creature could have been the same as the Cabogon that I spoke about earlier. The notorious bloop recording. We've all heard of this, but if you're thinking it can all be explained away as glacial ice, think again, there could be more to it than that. For those not in the know, the bloop was an eerie, unexplained sound that was recorded in 1997. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked up a powerful underwater noise in the South Pacific. This sound was incredibly low frequency and very loud. The mysterious sound was dubbed the bloop, and nobody knew what it was. Some thought it might be from a massive undiscovered sea creature. But in 2012, the NOAA figured that the bloop was actually just similar to noises made by shifting ice. The bloop was detected several times by an array of hydrophones designed to listen for undersea activity. The NOAA concluded that the sound matched patterns produced by ice quakes rather than some giant sea creature, but till this day not everyone is convinced. Some argue that the bloop's sound patterns are just too specific, pointing to it coming from some yet to be discovered animal. Are there walruses in the southern hemisphere? Well, not officially anyway, but there have been some very odd sightings over the years. Sightings of what have been dubbed southern walruses. Victorian naturalist James Hector, who was no stranger to odd animal reports, collected stories about walrus-like creatures spotted around New Zealand. Hector even speculated that these creatures might be lurking among the Antarctic ice flows. He thought if these areas were explored more extensively, they might uncover these walruses as well as other unknown animals. Thor Heyerdahl, the famous explorer, also had thoughts on this, saying that a Maori myth about a tusked merman might have actually been based on sightings of these mysterious southern hemisphere walruses. And there are other mentions of tusked creatures in the region. Historical records mention tusked marine mammals off South Africa. In Francois Legaut's Voyage and Adventures from 1707, Legaut described seeing a large red sea cow with long tusks off the Cape of Good Hope. Then in 1852, we have Hugh de Bonelly's sighting off Isla San Lorenzo in Peru. He saw a giant tusked seal described as having a seal-like head with two huge white tusks. With all these strange sightings and historical records, could there really be something out there lurking in the icy depths that we still don't fully understand? But walruses aren't the only out-of-place animals reported to show up in the southern hemisphere. Narwhals have as well. Back in 1615, Dutch explorer Willem Schouten had a close encounter when his ship was attacked by an unknown beast. The next day, they found a horn lodged in the ship about a foot long. Then in 1785, a French general reported seeing two dark porpoise-like animals south of Africa. He described them having a horn about 1.5 feet long and noted a high fin, which is odd since narwhals usually have a bony ridge. In 1892, the ship Baleina spotted a narwhal near the Bransfield Strait, pretty close to Antarctica. And these were experienced whalers who all said what they saw was definitely a narwhal, or at least looked a hell of a lot like one. In recent years, Antarctica has been the focus of some pretty wild conspiracy theories, one of which is that there are secret government facilities dedicated to the study of aliens and their technology. The remote and inhospitable climate of Antarctica would make for an ideal cover for secretive activities, and some conspiracy theorists point to satellite images and unusual geological formations in Antarctica as evidence of possible hidden alien bases. Some believe that there are massive pyramid-type structures buried under the ice that may have been built by some ancient civilization, possibly with the help of aliens, or just built by aliens themselves who once inhabited the Earth, setting up bases in the South Pole. The governments of the world are rumored to have secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology. Some even claim that these facilities have made contact with extraterrestrial beings. It's very hard to believe, but I'd like to think so. The Ningen is another more modern legend that's caught quite a bit of attention online in the last couple decades. Ningen, which means human in Japanese, is a creature supposedly lurking in the sub-Antarctic oceans. There are two main ways people describe the Ningen. The first is a massive whale-like creature with a humanoid face and giant limbs, said to be around 65 to 100 feet long. The second description is a lot less common, a smaller land-dwelling creature with a big head and humanoid legs. It's said to be pale blue with a big slit mouth and either small or gaping eyes. In 2007, there was a very interesting post made on the Japanese forum 2channel. According to the post, a whale research ship spotted this giant creature near their vessel off the Antarctic coast. The crew initially thought it was a submarine, but when they got closer, it vanished under the waves. Then in 2005, some folks claimed Google Earth caught a glimpse of what they thought was a Ningen in the Southern Ocean. Skeptics argued it was just an iceberg that sorta looked like a sea monster, but then there's the 2010 Enoshima Aquarium incident. The aquarium had posted a video to YouTube with footage of the deep ocean, and towards the end, several viewers spotted what looked like this eerie thing. It almost looked like a creature with a big smiling mouth and little eyes. A lot of commenters said it looked a lot like depictions of the Ningen. The aquarium later said it was just an unusual rock formation with sponges making up what looked like eyes, but some still find the footage undeniably creepy and even think there could be more to this video than the aquarium is letting on.
Number 10, dinosaur. When it comes to big things, dinosaurs were pretty damn big. Scientists were able to uncover the fossilized remains of a new and unknown species of dinosaur underneath the ice sheets in Greenland. When the dinosaurs were alive, the Earth was a lot warmer and more tropical, these fossils becoming trapped under the ice when the climate changed into the Ice Age. The skull they found is thought to be a two-legged plant-eating dinosaur of medium size, and they dubbed the new species Issy-Sinik. The dinosaur is believed to have grown to the size of 10 to 30 feet, and the skull they found is thought to be that of a younger dinosaur that had not fully grown yet. They used computer technology to create 3D scans of the head before sending the specimens to the Natural History Museum in Denmark, as they have sovereignty over the country of Greenland. It is the first known dinosaur to have been native to Greenland and is thought to come from the late Triassic period around 200 million years ago. Number 9. Bison. The massive carcass of a bison known as a steppe bison was found by a gold mining family in Alaska way back in 1979. They were using a mining hose and were melting a frozen block of ice, effectively thawing out the creature that had become trapped inside. The bison species is from the Ice Age, and the body that they found is thought to be tens of thousands of years old. Once they were finally able to fully excavate the body, they found other things alongside it, including hair, insects, wood, and different plants. When the pelt of the animal reacted to the soil around it, it turned the body blue, and so the bison ended up being dubbed Blue Babe. Analysis of the body showed it had died 36,000 years ago, a result of being attacked by an Ice Age lion. The ice allowed the creature to be incredibly well preserved, scientists even being able to find pockets of blood in the body. Number 8. Cave bear. This specimen found on an island in the Arctic was a very unique discovery, said to be one of the first of its kind. Researchers found a well-preserved body of a cave bear that was around 40,000 years old. Cave bears would grow to be around 7 feet long and typically weighed over 1,000 pounds in their adulthood. Before this discovery was made, they only knew about the animal from skulls and bones, and had never found a specimen that was this fully preserved. The body that they found had all of its organs still, and even still had its nose on its face, paired with its terrifyingly massive sharp teeth. According to one of Russia's leading Ice Age experts, the discovery of the body was of world importance and is the first and only find of its kind. The body was found by a group of reindeer herders on the island and was then sent around to various scientists to study the life of the animal. Number 7. Horned lark. Alright, some of these creatures aren't that big, but they're still pretty interesting, and size doesn't matter anyways. In 2018, fossil hunters were in the northeastern part of Siberia, known as the Pole of Cold, and they were tunneling into the permafrost. Deep underground, they discovered the body of a bird thought to be around 46,000 years old, but it was incredibly well preserved, and scientists say that it looks like it could have only died a few days ago. Researchers believe that it is the ancestor of the horned lark bird and is the first of its kind to have ever been discovered. It is also said to be one of the best preserved specimens ever discovered, as it was almost completely intact and still had all of its parts. The Ice Age that took place is thought to have generated many new species who adapted, and this is one of them. Siberia is home to a lot of frozen discoveries due to its freezing cold temperatures, and who knows what else is sitting in the ice, just waiting to be found. Number 6. Wolf. The Pleistocene era, or Ice Age, lasted from about 2 million to 11,000 years ago, and many great extinct creatures we've discovered come from this era. One of these discoveries was the head of a massive Ice Age era wolf that was still snarling 40,000 years after it had died. It was found in a cold region of Russia and is one of the first full-sized frozen wolves ever to be discovered. They found it in the summer of 2018, and it was described as having mammoth-like fur, sharp fangs, and was between the ages of 2 and 4 when it passed away. Because only the head was discovered, it only gave small clues towards the evolution of wolves and how they have changed and adapted over the years, but researchers were still able to reconstruct the head using 3D models and get a solid understanding of what these Ice Age wolves looked like. In fact, the specimen was so well preserved that it even still had parts of its brain. Number 5. Lion cubs. As I've mentioned before, Siberia is a place that is fairly popular for finding frozen specimens, and this time they didn't just find one animal, but instead 2 matching ones. They found 2 mummified cave lions that lived during the Ice Age around 30,000 years ago, giving them the names Sparta and Boris. They were found in 2017 and 2018 by mammoth tusk collectors, and one of the cubs was believed at the time to be the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. It was originally thought that the two cubs they discovered were siblings, being only a few months old at the time of their death, but research showed that Boris had actually died about 15,000 years before Sparta. Sparta still had her fur, teeth, skin, organs, and even her whiskers, looking like she may have only recently died despite being a part of a species that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. If given the chance to grow up, the cubs would have managed to grow to 5 feet long and weigh almost 1,000 pounds. Number 4. Sharks. Creatures that are found frozen in ice don't always actually come from the Ice Age. There are plenty of cold places right now where animals can unfortunately become trapped or pass away and then freeze. In Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it has become startlingly common for giant sharks to become frozen in the ice off the coast. A few years ago, they found a total of 4 different sharks that had all become frozen in the ice and passed away. The sharks were apparently becoming trapped in shallow waters during changing weather conditions, and sudden cold snaps would cause them to freeze and die. The thresher sharks that were commonly becoming trapped were apparently not a very well-studied species, so the bodies that were found were taken and thawed in order to be dissected and researched. The Atlantic White Shark Conservancy even went so far to refer to the specimens as sharksicles, but probably not something you'd want to eat on a hot day in the summer. Number 3. Mummies. Human remains are usually found when archaeologists dig up large graves and find skeletons, but in a rare case they managed to find the well-preserved and mummified body of a woman. A group of hikers exploring an Argentinian volcano found the body of a woman who appeared to have died around 500 years ago. The body was well preserved due to the incredibly high and cold elevation at which it was found. It's believed that the body was there as part of an ancient sacrificial ritual, and the woman, named the Inca Ice Maiden, was sacrificed. She was given lots of food and drink before being led up the volcano, where she was left to die of exposure. The discovery of her body was also incredibly important because from samples they took, they were able to discover that she was fighting tuberculosis, and these sorts of samples can help us work towards fighting these diseases in the modern day. Number 2. Foal. In the summer of 2018, they found what they called the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. Feels like they say that a lot. Anyways, mammoth tusk hunters in Siberia found the body of an around 42,000-year-old horse foal, incredibly well preserved thanks to the cold temperatures. They say that it was only about 2 weeks old at the time of its death, and they were able to extract both blood and urine samples from it. The discovery apparently pushed scientists closer to the hope that they could bring these extinct creatures like mammoths back to life. I think we should listen to Jurassic Park's warnings and just deal with the animals we actually have right now. I know you might be thinking that a baby horse isn't some terrifying giant Ice Age creature, but full-grown horses are pretty big, okay, and they're actually kind of terrifying. I mean, they basically walk on one giant finger. It's creepy, and I don't like it. Number 1. Baby mammoth. During the Ice Age, mammoths were one of the biggest creatures around, basically being massive furry elephants. This young woolly mammoth specimen was found in, you guessed it, Siberia. This incredibly well-preserved body of a young female woolly mammoth named Yucca is said to have lived around 28,000 years ago, and they were discovered around a decade ago. Due to her good condition, scientists were eager to conduct experiments, and one of those was taking cells from her body. When they put the cells together, they found that they were still active, even almost 30,000 years later, so they managed to technically revive Yucca in a way. At full size, woolly mammoths were usually around 13 feet tall and would weigh around 13,000 pounds, or the same as around 26,000 large oranges if that helps you picture it.